Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Wise Woman Wednesdays. I always get so excited when I'm doing this show because I get to bring inspired women from around the world who share their messages of strength and wisdom to be able to help us more fully embody our truth and activate our soul's calling. My name is Jennifer Regular and I am a soul-centered empowerment coach at Lighting the Path, and I'm also your host here for the podcast. And today, my guest is all the way from the other end of the world, once again, from Newcastle, Australia. Today, I welcome Kim Tennant. Thank you so much for joining us, Kim.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer. It's
Absolutely.
great to be with you.
Yes, it's so fun. And I'll tell the audience a little bit about you here. So throughout her life, Kim Tennant has always been fascinated by the stars. She had her first astrology reading in her 20s and couldn't believe that a stranger could know her so well. After studying under several astrologers, she started consulting when her children were very young. And so she used astrology to parent her own children and had done many children's charts over the years, actually helping parents to understand their children. But now her focus has shifted and she's helping women who have reached a new stage in their life where their children are grown up and they're looking to rediscover who they are. Her current passion is to create communities of women who want to go on a journey of self-discovery and share the process with others. So she particularly loves helping women connect with their true essence, which allows them the freedom to be themselves. And so today she's here to talk about astrology for women. There are so many different aspects of astrology, isn't there, Kim? And so how did it become your passion to focus more on women and helping them find the freedom to rediscover who they are?
I think we always end up teaching what we need to know, and I have found that astrology has been with me right from when I was a child. I was always fascinated, even as a little girl, with the stars and the moon and, making wishes on the first star. And so as I grew older and learnt more and then had my own children, that's when I become, really interested in how astrology could help me understand my own kids and my relationship with my children. And then sort of they grew up. So then it become, as I've gotten older, I've actually, I've seen a lot of friends and a lot of women I've come in contact with who really have no idea who they are. And it's not so much empty nest syndrome, because a lot of women still have their adult children around. It's more they're not needed in the same way and they've got more freedom, but it's like, okay, well, what do I do with that? Who am I? Because they haven't really stopped to think about it for a very long time because they've been too busy doing a lot of things for other people.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So being able to open new doors for them to be able to discover for themselves who they are now.
Yes. Yeah. And I've found that maybe it's just the women that I've been drawn to, or who have been drawn to me, but I've found that a lot of women, as they get older, seem to start looking for a more spiritual path in life. It's almost, like they start to go on a bit of a journey of exploration in a way. And I think relating to who they are in that risk, like going on that inner search, is part of that spiritual journey. And I found that with astrology, it's a wonderful tool to be able to help people understand, who they are. And it brings a lot of self-acceptance, because if you can sort of share, well, your sun's in this sign, or your moon's in that sign, or you're this rising sign, or you've got this planet down the bottom of your chart but all the rest up the top, or a whole heap of like just little snippets, people start and get really big aha moments, and it's like, oh yes, I've always wondered why I was like that, and and I was frustrated about it, but now I know that's me. It's okay. I don't need to be different because that's who I am, so it's quite freeing in that respect.
Yeah, and it really offers the opportunity for a deeper self-acceptance as well, because like you say, they're
Absolutely.
learning and understanding why they do the things they do sometimes, or
Mm,
what kind of
mm,
traits might be innate in them that they
yeah,
can even develop further. And I think it's
yeah.
important and interesting to understand too, just the depth of astrology, because some people, like more people understand astrology now,
Mm,
but there's still quite a few people that just think of astrology in terms of the sun sign or horoscopes, right? And your weekly
that's right.
day, and then all Capricorns,
Yeah,
which I am, are going to experience this, and
yeah.
um, there's a grain of truth in that, but it's not the whole
Yeah.
story, is it? So,
No, it's
what are
not.
the different aspects and things that make up our astrology, that make up our birth chart and our life path, essentially?
So, your astrology chart is calculated from your date of birth, the time that you were born, and the place that you were born in. And so, from that, I mean, it can be done by hand, but these days with computers, I think most people just put it into a computer program. And it's basically a map, like a map of the sky when you were born.
Mm,
So your rising sign is basically comes about because it's the constellation that was actually on the horizon when you were born. So the constellations of the zodiac, your rising sign, like it travels, it's moving. So basically, for 2 hours, you'll have a particular zodiac constellation on the horizon, and then it will move on and continue to tick around. So in a 24-hour period, you've got all of the 12 signs covered. So, so your rising sign makes up who you are, how you come across to people, the way you present yourself, and also the way you protect yourself, because the rising sign is also known as like the mask. So you may not actually show the real you when you first come across to people, depending on what your rising sign is. So, so that's a really, really interesting one. So, for example, I'm Cancer rising, and I have I've got a very instinctive nature, a very strong love of family, but I'm also very cautious and protective when I first meet people, because I'm kind of trying to suss them out. and
yes.
and Cancer rising can actually be known as, can be called cold, and I've been called cold over time from various people when they've first met me. Not because I am cold, I'm actually a very warm person, but because there's that protective mechanism there and you're not giving too much away. It's like Cancer in the Cancer the crab with their shell, their protective shell.
Right.
Yeah, so sometimes we can trick people with our rising sign, but we also look at every other planet. So we look at our sun sign, which is our most common, but also the moon for our emotions. Mercury describes our communication style and learning. Venus is about how we relate to people, how we give and receive love. Mars is our passion and our drive, and also potentially our anger.
Mm,
Um, and then we go on to, they're the personal planets, and then we go on to the slower moving planets, which are then the more generational planets. So we have Jupiter, which is our expansion and growth, where Saturn's our limitations and restrictions. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are also important, because Uranus is very much about where we might find things that are a bit erratic in our chart, where we want to be independent, where we want to be different in some way. Neptune's more our spirituality, and also where there can be some confusion in the chart. And Pluto is very much the planet of transformation and change. So there's always that, and also control. So wherever Pluto is in the chart, there's the potential for the control issues. So, and then of course there's Chiron and the North Node and the South Node, and there's many, many things that you can look at in your chart. But all of that, basically the way those planets interact with each other, where they sit, the signs they're in, all makes up our personality, which explains why if you're a Capricorn and you know 10 other Capricorns and you're all completely different, that's why. Yeah.
Yes, and I can imagine even the moon sign and the rising sign can vary too. So I'm a Capricorn, double Aries. So I'm a Capricorn sun sign, Aries rising sign, and an Aries moon sign. And so, I mean, that's the extent of what I know, though. What all that means, I was told at one time, and now I forget. But I know that there's something about, an inner struggle. And so, that there's, so if I'm struggling with something, it's like, it's not like you blame it on, but you can understand it through your astrological makeup. But then, so you have your natal chart, right? That's consistent throughout your lifetime. But then there's also charts that you can get for different topics, I understand, and different, even your year in advance or what's happening now, and not just for the person, but for the planet as well. Like, does the planet also have its own astrology?
The planet has its own chart, but it's not something that I've seen it, but I've not played with it. But every country has its own chart.
Oh, interesting.
Every city has its own chart. If you know when a city has been established, because for example, like Australia had, a lot of countries have got more than one chart. So Australia had its founding chart when it was first discovered, but then we also have a federation chart. So when we became a federation in 1901, so there's two charts, and usually once the second chart will take over. So it's like in a relationship, if I met someone, like when I met my husband, that would be our relationship chart. But when we got married, the marriage chart will take over.
Oh,
because it's the most constant. Yeah, it's the most recent sort of commitment chart, so to speak. Yeah, so marriage chart. Marriage has charts.
So much. Yeah.
It does.
Wow.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you chose to really focus on astrology for women. Is there a difference between astrology for women and astrology for men, or for other ways of identity too?
I think not. Personally, it's just that I prefer to work with women.
Sure.
I've got a very lunar chart, so I connect very strongly with the feminine, and so I'm just more comfortable with groups of women. I like to do that sort of stuff. Women are more open to, I find, to like things like rituals with the moon, like looking at new moon, full moon, and the different cycles of astrology, like what season are we in? We're in Taurus season now, and what does that mean? Women are open to that, where men, and I'm not being, there's a lot of men out there I know that are open to these things, so I'm not being judgmental in that respect, but because of the age of women that I like to work with, like women in their sort of 40s, 50s, 60s, I find that older men are probably not quite as open to a lot of that stuff, purely from a upbringing perspective. I think that's changing. Certainly younger men are definitely becoming more interested, I think, in a lot of this. And my own children, I have a boy and a girl, so my son has always listened to this stuff, so has my daughter. But if I looked at if I put up my daughter's chart and my son's chart and to a group of astrologers and said, who's the boy, who's the girl, purely on the energies in the chart, you would think my daughter had the masculine chart and my son had the feminine chart. And my son is not feminine in any way, shape or form, but he's soft. He's also strong, but he's got a lot of Cancer in his chart, a lot of Taurus in his chart. So he's very sensitive, and so he carries that kind of energy, even though to look at him and speak with him, he's still very much a male, but he's got that softness about him. My daughter is very much female, but she probably carries a more yang energy, so I don't think that you can say this is a female chart, this is a male chart. I think you've just got to look at each characteristic and sort of take it as it is, because different things make up different people, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And I love what you said about women getting back to now the ceremony and the
Mm,
sacredness and the lunar
mm,
energy, because I think that's so important to be in touch with the sacredness of life and to have reverence
yes.
for life. And it's
Yeah.
wonderful too that the younger generations of the males are stepping into that as well. But
Mm,
you're right, historically speaking, there is that energy, and the moon is a feminine energy, right? We,
mm.
in some cultures, would say grandmother moon, right? And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so much to learn from her as well. And
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, where it shows up in your chart, I guess, too, would speak to what kind of influences personally that the moon would have for you. Is that right?
You mean in your own natal chart, your
Yeah.
own natal moon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with the moon ruling your emotions, it's very much can give you that indication of how you are as a person emotionally. But it's also because the moon ebbs and flows wherever you find it in the chart. That area of life can ebb and flow as well. Um, so, for example, I've got my moon in the second house, which is the house of resources and money and self-esteem. And I find that, you know, I very much, my financial situation very much ebbs and flows. And it ebbs and flows,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think a lot
because
can
of
relate to
that
that
um, but and it's very much connected to my self-esteem, you know, too,
one.
which I find. But I find one thing I do love to teach women is, you know, have a look when the new moon is occurring or when the full moon is occurring, where is it falling in your own birth chart? Because it's not going to be necessarily in the same house in the birth chart as your natal moon. It will move around different houses as the year goes on. And
Oh,
so
okay.
they're the areas of life that because the new moon is a time of manifesting or making wishes or starting new projects for the best results. That's the energy. So wherever the new moon falls, it's the perfect time to start something in relation to that house. And where the full moon is a great time for releasing things to do with a house. So, for example, if you had, say, take the seventh house, which is the house of close relationships, a new moon, if you don't have a close relationship, but you really wanted to attract a partner into your life, then that would be the perfect time to do some sort of ritual around that. If you have someone in your life and the relationship's sort of a bit not one you want to break up, but there's some issues, then I always say, well, you don't have to actually release the relationship on a full moon, but you can release the issues,
Oh,
you know, so that you can improve the relationship. So yeah, so there's lots of ways of, and I think it's just another tool to really make us conscious of how we want to live our life, and actually actively take steps towards doing that. Really, there's a magic about it, but it also makes us more conscious of things. It makes us look at things, whereas we tend to go through life. I think a lot of people just go through life and they don't stop and think
it's
about,
true.
you know,
Yes.
what's going on.
There's so much
Yeah,
action and not as much reflection.
that's right. Yeah,
Yes. And astrology sounds like it can just offer a whole wealth of information for how to best live your life and how to
yeah,
use different timelines as well. Like you mentioned about
yes, yeah.
the times of the year and the new moon and the full moon and where
Mm,
that sits in the chart. And there's a lot of information here that can be used to really live your best life and also
yeah.
rediscover and discover or uncover who you truly are as well, and what
Yeah.
you're who you're meant to be and how to show up in the world and how to best approach life and what you're
Mm,
meant to do in life as well.
mm,
There's so much that can be accessed through astrology, it sounds like.
yeah.
So what is it that people do tend to come to you for? What kind of issues or questions do typically people come to you to find out more about, to find answers
I
to?
I find people fall into two kind of categories. So people that have started to look at astrology but want more information. So they're looking at their birth chart and they're kind of getting a bit of a, going, oh, well, that means that, but I can't really put the whole thing together. So people come because they just want a complete, overview of their birth chart to understand more, which is great. I think that's really good. And the other group of people that tend to come are people that have a lot of planetary transits going on. So because when you have a lot of impact by the planets today in your chart, so if we can look at where the planets are sitting today and plot them on our own birth chart, sometimes there's not a lot going on, other times you're being hugely affected. And it's when people have a lot going on in their life, it's usually they've got quite a few transits going on, and so they're kind of like, oh gosh, why is all this happening? Please, can someone give me some answers? And they find that really comforting. I don't like to predict as such as work in themes. So different planets will bring different themes to your life, and depending on the house that it's occurring or the other planets that it's touching, that sort of thing, you can sort of bring up different potential themes that people can relate to, and then they can get clearer on exactly what it is in their own life. I think it's quite dangerous to just go, well, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you can never know for sure how something's actually going to manifest, but the energy around what's going to manifest. So
yes,
so I think you've got to be careful. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you've got to be careful when you're speaking with people, because you don't want someone to go away and think, oh no, something bad's going to happen.
Yes.
You need to just discuss energies, because that's what it is. I mean, everything has energy, including the planets, and that's the type of energy that may be around you at the time. But it's comforting for people to know that it's not going to last forever either. And that's where timelines come in, when you can say, well, this particular transit, it started at this time and it's going to hang around, until mid next year, but it'll be on and off. But, if you get the lessons and you're going with the flow, it's going to be a lot easier. But by this time next year, it'll all be over, and people go, oh, well, I can work with that. That's okay,
Yeah, it's very empowering to know that and to feel that and just get an overall sense of what we're working with here, and be able to give people those themes so that they have something to focus on, that they can direct their efforts or energy towards, and to deepen the experience of that too. I think that's wonderful. And yeah, you're right. I think that's important to understand, to not go to psychics and astrologers expecting answers to things, because it tends to give your power away then, right? And astrology,
I think so.
the way you're describing it, is more information that the person can then take away and be able to make conscious choices around what they're going through right now. And it was interesting too to hear, as you were speaking about, one day you might have these planets in your chart and these houses, and a couple days later they might be making a different transit, because sometimes people feel, they're so great, they're on top of the world one day, and a couple days later it's like a completely different story, right? And I think, what happened? What did I do wrong? Or what's going on? And they start to blame themselves or question or create some self-doubt. And really what sounds like is happening is that it's a different kind of energy day, because each day, and maybe even each moment of the day, we're being influenced by those cosmic energies.
Absolutely.
That are constantly moving, as you said.
Yes. And it's the bigger transits. So things like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto take years and years and years to go through a sign of the zodiac. So if you've got a transit, say, from Pluto, it can take a couple of years to actually complete, compared to, say, Mars might be a couple of days, so the personal planets tend to move quite quickly, and they're not really going to impact you as strongly as what the outer planets will do, because the outer planets are going to hang around for so long. It's like a major life lesson. So, you know, when you might hear someone that says, oh, my father was in a car accident, and then, you know, my grandmother died, and then I've just lost my job, and oh my gosh, what's going on? That's that big energy. But when these things happen, there's always a lesson, and there's always a gift at the end. And it's almost like, and not everyone has to go through that, but some people do. And as soon as I hear people saying that, I think, oh yeah, you've got a big transit going on.
Oh,
you know.
yes.
But it always brings a gift, and if you learn the lesson, then you've grown. You've got soul growth, which is the whole point of being here, isn't it? So,
yes, the soul growth, absolutely. And earlier you mentioned about relationships as well. And I know for a lot of women, I remember even as a teenager, you know, you want to know the sign of the crush that you have, and you know, if they're compatible or not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that level of it. And then you spoke about, even for yourself, that you had, you know, this relationship chart. So you and your husband in the relationship, and then you and your husband in the marriage chart. So that's also very interesting. So maybe what is the way that women would approach you for like a soulmate chart, or finding a relationship, or the marriage, or in dating, or even if it's in the stars for them, you know, to even meet someone, because there's many women out there too that are living a single life. So how does that all factor in with astrology?
I actually had a woman come to me once, and she said to me, I want you to tell me if I've got a relationship coming in the next 12 months.
Oh.
And if I don't, then she said, I'm going to stop looking and just focus on my career. She said, I just want to know so that I stop thinking about it all the time. And I thought, oh, the pressure. And of course she didn't. There was nothing, no indicators. So I had a look, and I think it was something like 4 years down the track or something. So I said to her, look, there's nothing, I cannot see anything at the moment, but I've looked further, and you know, there's indications that, you know, there'll be more action around that area of your life, you know, at this time. And she said, thank you so much. She said, that has been so helpful, because now I'll just get on with my life and stop worrying about all this, and know that it'll unfold when it will unfold, which I wasn't 100% comfortable doing that for her, because I don't like to sort of never say never, but at the same time, for her, that brought her a lot of comfort. I've had other people that where I've literally looked at someone's chart and gone, you're going to meet someone literally like next week.
Oh wow.
And they have. And they've gone, oh. You know, so it just depends. But as far as compatibility goes, then you can do two things. You can do a synastry chart, which is where you look at your chart and someone else's chart, and you look at how each chart and planets impact each other. And you can do what they call a composite chart, which takes each planet in turn and creates a midpoint for. So for example, if someone had the sun in Aries and someone had the sun in Gemini, their composite sun would probably be in Taurus, because it's in the middle. So it's the middle sign, so depending on the degrees, it would probably be around that. So and that just gives you an energy of the actual relationship itself, rather than how I might relate to you or you might relate to me. Instead, it's just our relationship chart, as when we're together, this is how we function. So yeah, which is fascinating in itself.
Yes. And so, yeah, it could be a romantic relationship, or friendship, or even family relationships,
or you and your kids. And that's right.
Employer and employee, and so on. Yeah. Really fascinating stuff. Like, there's so much information.
Even things like, you know, different, like kids going to school and the age of their teacher. Because for some children, say for example, like my kids are in their early 20s, and they've got Pluto. One's got Pluto at 7 degrees, one's got Pluto at 10. So for any teachers around their early 20s now with Pluto there, any in Sagittarius, so any Sagittarian children that they get in their class that have their sun between, you know, that say 5 to 12 degree mark, there's going to be control issues there, because their Pluto is going to be sitting on that child's sun. So there could be issues, you know, there, which is interesting, you know, or the same thing with other, you know, other planets and other teachers. So, you know, it works in everything, you know, and it's quite common. I mean, really, when you think about it, not every kid's going to have an issue with their teacher, but we all definitely clicked with one teacher more than another at some
That's
stage.
true.
You know.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned what you're most
Yeah.
passionate about in
Yeah.
working with astrology with women is helping
Women.
them to
Yeah.
rediscover themselves and
Yes.
in their
Yeah.
essence. And
Yeah.
so how does that show up in your chart, in your work?
In regard to
what do you see awaken within them or see transform within them once they connect with that essence? Like, how is it just in reading the charts with them that that connects them with that, or is there something else that you witness that goes on?
I think it's more just almost from just a reading, or I ran a workshop recently, and the women there all, you know, they were having lots of aha moments and going, oh, this is great, this is so amazing. And one lady, I'd actually done a chart, she had contacted me to do a chart for her 21-year-old son as a birthday gift, which was just lovely. And then she ended up coming to my workshop, and she said, oh, I just feel like I'm on this spiritual path, and this is so much a part of it, you know. And so, you know, just asking more questions, and it almost gives them permission to be able to explore further, not only in astrology, but then start going, oh, well, what about tarot, or what about, you know what I mean, like or maybe learning more about psychic healing, like tapping into, like doing a psychic course, or not to become a psychic, but to open that part of themselves up, you know. So it just, I guess it puts them on the path of like a journey that they're going to take for the rest of their life, really.
Incredible. And so how would people get in touch with you to be able to have those kind of experiences and to gain more knowledge about who they are through their birth chart or through their current chart?
Yeah. So I have a website called Pandora's Moon, and so I've got the things that I offer there, and I also run workshops, and sometimes I do classes at a local shop called Witch and Willow. And I've also run the Astrology for Women tribe through our sacred community. And I have a lovely group of women there. I think our tribe's tripled in the last 6 months, which has been great, where we meet every month and discuss a different house in the birth chart. That's what we're doing this year, and look at the new moon and full moon for the months. And that's been lovely to get to know all of those women, because they're just beautiful. But I've also met some amazing women in other ways. They sort of turn up in different ways, and and I'm currently working at creating my own community outside of our sacred community as well, because I do have quite a few women that I've taught over time and done charts for. So I'm working on connecting those back together as well, so that we can be more connected, and they can sort of have a bit more guidance as to whereabouts on the path they are and what's happening for them, and, you know, just keep a hold of it. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that it's building and evolving. And like you say, it's really accelerating. Like the community has tripled in one level, and you're starting this other community, and
yeah,
I can really see how driven you are with this passion, and how much it can have such a positive impact on other women as well,
yeah,
which then has its own ripple effect throughout the
yeah,
world.
that's right.
Yes,
Yeah,
and yes,
yeah.
yes. And so I'll have those links in the show notes for people to click
Mhm.
on, so that you can connect with Kim and her website and see all those wonderful communities and workshops and different readings that she does as well. Kim, do you have any other words or final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
Um, I just think trusting in yourself, listen to yourself, and just go with what your own I guess higher self is telling you, because that's what all of these modalities are really about, bringing you more in tune with who you really are. And if you feel called that astrology might be a modality that you might want to explore and actually help you to tap into that, then I'd be more than happy to help. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You've helped a lot of women already, and men who've
Thank
been
you.
listening to this. And I really appreciate all that you shared today, Kim. Thank you so much for joining us here on Wise Women Wednesdays.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who have been listening and watching. I honor you, and I hope you'll join us again on Wise Women Wednesdays. Thank you so much. Bye for now.